As many of you will know, in this month's church family teaching, we're looking at a public hope. And in that teaching, I'm going to be using some really important words and terms to help us get our heads around how the gospel impacts the way we think about culture and about faith in the public square. And I'm aware that some of these terms won't be familiar to us. And so in this short video, I want to give a go at explaining one of the most important to you, liberalism. And I know that some of you like pictures as well as words. John Cook, I'm thinking particularly of you. So what I'm going to try and do is draw a little picture that might help us understand what I mean by liberalism. My drawing skills are poor, so this will be basic and potentially a bit rubbish, but I hope it will help you to understand what I mean. So here we go. So liberalism might remind us of like the Liberal Democrats or left wing or, you know, people who aren't conservatives, but liberalism's actually got nothing to do with that. Liberalism is a sort of philosophy, a way of thinking that is dominant in our culture. And I give more details about it in the podcast. Today I'm just going to outline the main things that make liberalism liberalism. And it goes a bit like this. Okay, so liberalism tells us a story about humanity. And liberalism says that we are basically a series of individuals, which I am representing by stickmen and stickwomen like this. So fundamentally, we are a load of individuals that have to live together in the same space, like the earth. And the problem is that I have my own sort of goals, desires, aims, wishes. I have what I want. But this person over here, person number 2, they have a different set of desires and aims and goals. And everybody, in fact, has a different set of desires and aims, and their wills are different. And because they're different, they're always in conflict. Like if I want to sit on the sofa and you want to sit on the sofa, then we've got a conflict of aims. But this extends to everything in life. So liberalism says the basic state of humanity is conflict. That is our fundamental starting point, is that we're in conflict with one another. And in the memorable phrase of this is the war of all against all. So the first point of liberalism is basic conflict. So, what are we to do about this situation? Well, liberalism says, the problem is that if we're all fighting each other, none of us get what we want because we're too busy having conflict. So what we need to do is find a way where we can have the most of what we want and you can have the most of what you want without us all destroying each other. So we have to pursue our freedom to assert our will, our freedom to get what we want. But this freedom is just a freedom for anything, not for anything in particular, but a freedom for whatever we want. And therefore, this is what we call negative freedom. We have to find a way of organising our society so that we can be as free as possible for whatever we want. And the way we do that, the solution then, is to have a social contract. So we all agree some certain ways of treating each other, like you can do what you want as long as it doesn't harm me too much, and I can do what I want as long as it doesn't harm you. And that's basically the way we organise our society. We organise things in the social contract to stop us damaging each other and letting us have the most freedom, negative freedom, that we can do. That is liberalism. And that is the dominant assumption of you and me and everyone else in our culture at the moment. The problem is that this is not Christianity. And Christianity has a very different vision of how we understand our basic social situation. So let's just talk about Christianity. So Christianity also says, yes, we are individuals in the sense that God has created us all unique different people. But because we're created by God, because we're in his image, it's not the case that we all have desires and needs that are totally different from one another. That actually we all have a lot in common because we're created. And fundamentally what we're created for is not to oppose each other like liberalism, but to love one another. So the best way I can demonstrate this in a drawing is that whereas these arrows represent a kind of conflict where we end up fighting, these arrows instead represent a mutual giving and receiving of love. Christianity says that our basic state, our original intention is not conflict, but peace. We were made to be at peace with one another, to love one another in the giving and receiving of love. Now, what's gone wrong, of course, is sin, which I talk about on the podcast. But this doesn't undermine our basic starting point. But sin has happened, so we're all fallible individuals. We no longer do this very well. We tend to hurt each other instead of love each other and that kind of thing. So what we need then is also freedom. But this is not the freedom of liberalism. What we need is positive freedom. It's not a freedom to do whatever I like or a freedom to be whoever I think I want to be. It's a freedom to be who God made me to be. It's a freedom to not be captive to sin, but to be captive to righteousness instead. It's a freedom to actually live the good life and achieve good ends. So we as Christians, we don't pursue negative freedom. We don't pursue being able to do whatever you want. We pursue being able to do what you were made for, positive freedom. And so finally, this means that our ambition is not for some social contract that just lets us get on with our own lives and fundamentally violent with each other. No, our vision is for the common good. We don't want to just establish an agreement where we can do what we want. We want to pursue something that leads to human flourishing, that's good for all of us. So if I stand out of the way, hopefully you can see the contrast between those two. Liberalism says our basic state is violence and conflict. What we need is negative freedom, and we're going to do that by having a social contract. Christianity says our basic state is peace. What we need is positive freedom to get back there. And how we're going to do that is we're going to pursue the common good. This is the basis of our public hope. And this is the stuff that's in all of us that gets in the way. So hopefully that helps you to understand liberalism. Hopefully that might make a bit more sense of the podcasts. And if that still hasn't done the job, then you can join me on a Zoom and I'll try and draw a better picture or something and we'll get there together.